Hi everyone. Wasn't Kaylee awesome? I just absolutely loved hearing that, Kaylee. It was awesome. It's great. Okay, so just over 10 years ago, I moved from Melbourne to Sydney with my husband and 2 young children. I had had consulting work lined up when I got there, but when I got there I decided that that wasn't going to work for me, and I decided to take some time out. My children had just started primary school and preschool and I wanted to spend some time with them. But after 6 months of the exhaustion that is stay-at-home parenting, I decided to go back to uni. I went back to study applied linguistics in a course called Communication in Professions and Organisations. I had worked with a linguist while I worked at Hammersley Iron here in the 1990s. She was amazing, and I'd always had a flair for business communications, so off I went. In the first unit of that course, I had an assignment to review the work of an internationally renowned linguistic professor on the use of language in emails in a merged Dutch and English-speaking company. I won't mention what company that is, but you may be able to work it out. This organisation needed to know how well the cultures were merging in this company, and the feeling was that this could be determined in part by the extent to which employees retained their own language or whether they had merged to a single corporate language. This author had examined a large number of emails used to book meeting rooms at that company, so wholly not controversial. And through an examination of what we call the linguistic features of the emails, and by that I mean things like politeness strategies, grammar, hedges, and other use of words like block letters and so forth, she had concluded that Englishness was well embedded in that company and that a single corporate language had actually emerged. In my paper, I disagreed with her assessment. I drew on my experience working in Hammersley Iron back in the 90s when I was on a team that was tasked with embedding the all-staff program, if anyone was around then. And we paid a lot of attention to the use of language as a way of testing how well that program had embedded in the organisation. So when she saw a single corporate language, I saw underlying dissent in these emails. In short, where the author saw a single style of email, I saw two. I saw a formal email style and a more casual style. In the more casual emails where senders forgot that they were communicating in a public medium, they reverted to elements of language which signalled a second corporate language that was only shared by Dutch speakers. I knew it was a bolshy move to write that up as a conclusion, but I was safe in the knowledge that the author was ensconced in her Hong Kong office and wouldn't care a jot about what a stay-at-home mum in Sydney would have to say about her work. However, it turned out that my professor agreed with my analysis, and I got a high distinction on that paper, and then he wrote this. I think you might write that up. There's a big European conference on languages for special purposes in Bergamo, Italy in August 2005. You should try for a paper. So what did I do? I didn't know what to do. Who was I to stand up at an international forum to refute the work of a very well-known linguist? I didn't speak Dutch. The author of the paper spoke both Dutch and English. And how could I, a stay-at-home mum, ever figure out how to get to Italy for a conference, for heaven's sake? My way of dealing with it was to do absolutely nothing. Eventually I decided after a while that maybe I'd go and talk to my professor and get some more information, but I'd left it so long that when I turned up, he said that the time for an abstract had passed and I'd missed my chance. My name is McCracken, and I work like many of you in operational businesses in a state not famous for the rate at which it promotes female leaders. I often feel that I have no control over my diary, and I still have days where I doubt myself, even though those days, thankfully, are fewer and fewer. My success relies every day on my ability to influence others. I have a husband that works as hard as I do, and 2 teenagers, one of whom is 2 weeks away from waste mocks. Stress levels in our house are about to go up. Over the last 10 years, I've replayed that scene over and over. I'd always had a flair for business communication. I had come face to face with the possibility that I could make a career out of it, even without finishing the first semester of my degree. And I turned the opportunity down. I've been working in HR for 25 years, and I've seen more people let opportunities pass them by than take them up. Some don't recognise opportunities for what they are, some don't have the confidence to take them on, and some simply put false barriers in their way. To future-proof your career, you need to stay relevant, and passing up opportunities is not ideal in this circumstance. I missed a big opportunity back in 2004, and I was determined I would not repeat that mistake. So how do you avoid missing opportunities, stay relevant, and how do you therefore future-proof your career? Okay, so there's conventional wisdom, and the conventional wisdom would say you figure out what the next big thing is and you go for it. There are plenty of opinions on what will be the biggest industries over the next 5 years, and I'm going to show you some of them because some of you may expect to have seen those today. So the federal government has identified 5 industry growth areas which Australia has a natural competitive advantage in, and has started to develop what's called growth centres in each of those ones. Food and agribusiness, mining equipment, technology and services, oil, gas and energy resources, medical technologies and pharmaceuticals, and advanced manufacturing. So good news for a lot of people in this room, and that's certainly a good sign for you. And if you've got an interest in those areas and have studied in those areas, awesome. The Business Council of Australia also conducted some research, and in July last year, backed by McKinsey, they developed a list of 5 industry sectors that they believe Australia should focus on as the best chance for economic growth and job creation. Mining and LNG, agribusiness, tourism, advanced manufacturing again, and this time international education. And not to be left out, Deloitte has also done some excellent work, and in part 3 of their Building the Lucky Country series proposed the Deloitte 25, which are 25 hot spots that they believe have the greatest potential to contribute to Australia's prosperity. They identified, unsurprisingly, that mining was the current wave, but that the next wave will be what they call the Fantastic Five. Agribusiness, gas, tourism, international education again, and this time wealth management. You'll notice some similarities across the 3 reports, and it's no wonder that educators are encouraging students to study STEM subjects. So science, technology, education and maths is undoubtedly going to be required and well thought through for those educators to get those, and we do encourage everyone to be studying in those areas if that's their thing, and this is the point. I read somewhere that 65% of jobs we'll be doing in the next 10 years haven't even been invented yet. And it's not likely, unless you're financially very secure, that you'll be retiring as early as 65 anymore. I have a feeling I'll be working well into my 70s. My father's working into his 70s, so I think it's a pretty done deal that I will be following in that pathway. I may not be doing what I'm doing now. In fact, statistically, that's very unlikely, but it's likely that I will be working. So what will I be doing? How will I prepare for it? Particularly if I don't know what the next big thing is, nor what jobs will be available then. I work in a firm with an ageing workforce, so I understand how important it is to stay relevant, but how do you know that when you don't know what's coming? The other day I heard this term, jobsolete. So how do you ensure you don't become jobsolete? So I think that while it's really smart to think about what jobs are likely to be around in the future, the truth is that the future is very hard to predict. So by all means, aim for one of these areas, especially if that's an area of interest. But I'm going to propose an alternative to that. The alternative I propose is to work out, this is nothing new here, work out what you love, what you are good at, and to focus on putting yourself in the best position to recognise opportunities when they arise and grab them. So how did I miss the linguistics opportunity? I didn't recognise the signs that this was something I was good at. I had a fixed view of who I was, and linguistics expert wasn't one of them. I had a whole pile of other titles for myself, and largely that was HR manager, industrial relations professional, and even mother. And therefore I wasn't really open to left field opportunities, and I put it in the too hard basket and it passed me by. And I didn't have the confidence just to say yes and work out how later. So in short, I wasn't prepared. Future-proofing your career is less about predicting the next big thing and more about always being prepared to take on the opportunities that present themselves, even if they seem a little bit different. So I'm going to propose some golden rules for grabbing opportunities. I'm going to cheat a little bit because these aren't my golden rules. I didn't make them up. In fact, you know all of these rules already. You've seen them around. Some have been around for generations or even thousands of years. It's just a matter of actually applying them. So what are they? Know thyself. Sometimes attributed to Socrates, that is however unknown. What we do know that it was inscribed on the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, so it was a few years ago now. Who are you? What floats your boat and what are you good at? And just as importantly, what is not you? If you can do this honestly, then you will recognise which opportunities are right and which ones are wrong for you. While I missed the opportunity to present a paper 10 years ago, I finally acknowledged that I was quite good at internal comms. Many of us question our abilities, but I had to acknowledge that if my professor thought I could present my findings internationally, I probably wasn't too shabby at it. But it took me a long time to figure that out. If you want something a little bit more modern, then Steve Jobs has said something fairly similar, and the only way to get great work is to love what you do. Next, there's another saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Again, this probably turned up about during the First World War. We think in America somewhere, probably on the East Coast, at the time when management theory was starting to get its early hold. And this is about networking with a diverse range of people. I hate to say it, but if you think that just doing a good job and hanging out with workmates is going to get you ahead, you're absolutely kidding yourself. You need to network with a very diverse range of people. You will need organisational networks. You will need women-only networks. You will need your male-only networks. You will need the fellow dog walker networks. And you will need the crazy person that you met at a fundraising event. You never know when a contact you've made will come in handy. I helped out a lot at my children's primary school in Sydney when I took 5 years full-time out of the workplace. And I had no idea or interest really in who was standing with me at school pickup in terms of what they could do for me. Yet when I was looking for a job, it turned out that many of those people were in a position to recommend me around town and did so without my knowing. Next is Roger Ascham. Roger was the tutor to who became Elizabeth I, but also to many other Tudor princesses, Mary I and others. He's known maybe as one of the early proponents of female education, and there's a school in Sydney named after him. Some of you may know or may have even been to that school. By experience, we find a short way to a long wandering, and by this I mean I'd like you to think about focusing on developing rich and deep experience, and don't be a rush to get to the top. Again, I took 5 years full-time out of the paid workforce, and that's considered career suicide by some. But the experience I got from that 5 years has contributed greatly to the person I am today. Not only did I do further study, but I could reflect that the volunteering I'd done at my children's schools actually help my people management skills, because those of you who've ever managed volunteer workforces know that that's a far more difficult job than ever managing someone that's paid to do things for you. So it is the richness of your experiences that will contribute to your longevity in the workforce. The next thing is about having confidence in your abilities. Now, we heard a little bit from Sabina about Sheryl Sandberg, and she said in her book, Lean In, we hold ourselves back in ways both big and small, by lacking self-confidence, by not raising our hands, and by pulling back when we should be leaning in. But she wasn't the first person to say things like that. Marie Curie also said a very similar thing. Life is not easy for any of us, but what of that? We must have perseverance and above all confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained. It's kind of linked into my first golden rule of know thyself, but it's adding to that and understanding your value in others and value to others. In understanding your value to others, you can have greater confidence in recognising and accepting opportunities. And then when you are prepared by applying all of these golden rules, then you can actually listen to the wise words of a telecommunications company and say yes. You will know what, when you've actually thought about these things, you will know what you will say yes to and what you will say no to. So then when a yes opportunity comes up, like say presenting at an international conference, you can say yes immediately and put yourself in a position to find out more. The thing is, you can always say no later, but often you'll miss the opportunity to say yes again. And then the next one is, nothing is a waste of time if you use experience wisely, because I also don't want you to worry about the opportunities you've missed in the past or the ones that you'll continue to miss in the future. We all miss opportunities. The important thing is to learn from them. I've reflected on my lost opportunity to present that paper, but I'm actually thrilled with where my career has gone since then, and I credit a lot of that to the experience I got from missing that opportunity. So after 5 years out of the paid workforce, I was looking to work back in the HR field again. Actually, this came about because my husband told me that if I was working 40 hours a week in a volunteer capacity, that perhaps I could go out and earn some money. And by the way, I was starting to really annoy people. The trouble is, when I went out and started looking again, recruiters started telling me I'd been out of the workforce for so long that I would have to start again. So I'd been in an executive position in HR, and they were actually showing me advisor level roles that I might consider. I soon learned, I'm sorry to say for recruiters in the room, to ignore the recruiters and started talking to companies direct. That's where those networks came in handy, because suddenly I realised there were a few people out there that I had been helping in a volunteer capacity that could help me now. Eventually I found myself in an interview for the role of the Australian-based HR director at an energy company whose headquarters were in Paris. The interview was by video conference, and the head of HR was sitting in Paris, speaking very heavily accented English, and I was trying to sprinkle my sentences with very bad schoolgirl French. I may have missed the opportunity to present a linguistics paper at an international conference, but I was now confident that I had a flair for business communication. The interviewer asked me what point of difference I brought to HR, and this time I was prepared. I was able to tell him that the 5 years I'd spent out of the workforce, studying applied linguistics and working with volunteers, had renewed my interest in the HR field, that my point of difference was that I recognised the importance of language and internal communications in my role and my role with volunteer workforces had honed my leadership skills. I not only got the job, but the years I spent out of the paid workforce studying and volunteered actually helped, not hindered, my ability to return to the paid workforce. I want to leave you with one more quote. This one stuck on my fridge. I look at it every day. It's Eleanor Roosevelt. I love this one. We must do the thing we think we cannot do. It sits there with my school notices, and it reminds me every morning before I go to work that I have to have the confidence to take up the opportunities that may present themselves today. Thank you.